explaining what it was like being an evacuee in World War II. Please enjoy.
Then the war started, and the government had a scheme to send children to the colonies, to New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Canada, and the USA, which wasn't a colony, of course, but was a friend. And they sent about 3,500 children to these countries.
Wow.
So we were all packed up and off we went. And before we went, my mother's, my brother died 2 years before, and so she was feeling very anxious that anything should happen to me, and she agreed that I should go. I think it was probably a very hard decision for her. But off we went. Now, we went on a ship called the Antonia. I've got a picture here of the ship, and it says here that Joan Valerie Oldfield departed Greenock, Scotland on August the 8th, 1940, and arrived at Pier 21 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, on August the 21st, 1940, aboard the Antonia. Now, when we arrived in Canada, we arrived at Nova Scotia, this Pier 21, as I say, and we were all put on a train and sent across Canada, with children being dropped off at stations on the route like Montreal and Ottawa, Toronto. And I was right at the end of the journey in Winnipeg, which is bang in the heart of Canada, in the coldest possible city there is. Mind you, this was August, so it wasn't cold when we arrived. And here we are on the train, arriving.
It's there, if you can see. Who did you stay with?
With two people there, man and wife, called Paul and Tessa Charles, and they were just wonderful to me.
This was the house my grandmother lived in when she was evacuated to Canada. And do you know what your parents were doing back in England?
Well, I used to get postcards from my mum regularly over the 4 years, although the war meant that the letters were not, it wasn't easy to get letters through because the ships were always being blown up. And but however, I did get postcards from her, and I used to write to her. It got more difficult as time went on because I didn't really know what she was doing or what was happening, and that was quite hard to write a letter. I remember sitting there thinking, what am I going to say? It didn't flow off my pen.
And do you know what your dad was doing? Was he?
Oh yes, I do. Yes. Well, in 41 he was called up. Men were called up. He was rather older than the young men who had been called up first, but they called up everybody in the end. Well, within a certain age. And he worked he was placed in the RAF, where he was a mechanic working on Spitfires. And so he was busy repairing the Spitfires, and they came back from their raids and fights in the sky with all the German aircraft.
And what ship, do you know what ship you went back on?
Yes, I do. It was called the Duchess of York. I went back, and we left from Halifax, the same port I'd come in, and that, where we arrived, which is called Pier 21, there's now a museum. So I came back on the Duchess of Bedford, and I left in January 1946. The war, of course, ended in 44, but it didn't officially. The children weren't moved back until 45, and it was agreed that I could stay another 6 months because my mother hoped that she would be able to come out and see the family that I'd lived with. But in fact, there were no places on the ships. They were full up with returning soldiers from the war, and so she couldn't do that. And in the end, they just had to send me home. There were about 12 of us on the return journey, and we came back to England, and it was a very different place from Winnipeg, I can tell you. It was very grey and very cold and very gloomy, and needed a good coat of paint everywhere. And people soldiers needed to be able to eat food and get warm, but we had 5 years of rationing then till 1951.
I've really enjoyed doing this project and I've found so much out about my family. I hope this will inspire others to do the same, to find out about their family past.